Well, welcome to today's episode of the Group Therapy Podcast. Today we have the host of the On Wednesdays We Talk Weird, the cryptozoologist, the Fortean Investigator, Ashley Hilt. Ashley, tell us about yourself.
Oh gosh. Well, you only maybe covered a smidge, so I'm insulted. I'm just kidding. Um, yeah, so I'm a Fortean investigator. Basically that covers all of the umbrella of weird. Right? So I do cryptozoology, ufology, the paranormal, basically anything and everything that isn't explained with conventional science. Because I do that, and nobody really pays us to do that part of it. I also have a weekly podcast where we talk about all of those subjects and more. On Wednesdays, we talk weird. And I do other things. I lecture at conventions. I'm writing a book. I'm making a documentary. I wear many hats and do many things.
Yeah, it seems like it. How do you find the time?
That's a really good question. I don't sleep, and I have no social life. So
yeah, I understand that one.
When your hobbies become your job, it is a very interesting, you know, people are always very jealous of what I do, and I understand, right? Because I used to be that person, right? I wanted to do those things, so well, I did. And but when you kind of make that shift and you make that jump into, becoming an investigator and kind of, getting your life really entangled in all this stuff, well, you have to find new hobbies, right? You got to find a different way to decompress.
Yep.
But no, that's a very valid question. How do I find the time? Very slowly.
Oh, I completely understand. I was one of them people that I turned my hobby into my business, and I had to find other hobbies, and then these hobbies became this.
Yeah.
Now I'm probably had to find a third hobby too.
Yeah, you got to get. So far, it's been horror movies, and I've been thinking about doing a horror movie podcast, but I'm like, I'm on the fence because I think people would love it. I'm really involved in that community also, but I'm like, guys, I got to have something for me.
Yep. Yeah. We were going to have a podcast talk horror movies. We're going to do the obscure movies that we all love, and then it got down to it. I'm like, man, I was like, I just want to watch a movie and enjoy a movie. I don't want to have to do a book report on it.
I mean, I'll probably do it eventually. I'll be honest. It probably will happen. But I gotta offload something else first. So we'll see.
Oh, definitely. So I have to ask you, how did you get into the weird and wild world of the paranormal and the whatnot?
Oh gosh, that's a hard question. Well, I really got into cryptozoology was like my main deal forever. When I was in sixth grade, I read an article. I used to get these little like shitty. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can cuss or not.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh, okay. Well, then we used to get these really shitty, like, Time magazine little leaflet things at school that we could read, right? Like when we had nothing else to do. And, I happened to be reading one, and there was an article in it about Ray Wallace and how Ray Wallace had died. It was big news because on his deathbed, his family had come out. Getting ready to tell you who Ray Wallace is, so it's all right. You guys will know who he is in a second. It had come out that Ray Wallace was really famous for a lot of these Bigfoot casts that he had gotten in California. Was a hoaxer. It was all fake. All the casts that he made were completely fake. And then the article went on to question the famous Patterson-Gimlin film, which is the big thick Patty looking over his shoulder, yep. the famous Bigfoot. And the reason why Patterson and Gimlin were even out in that area was because Patterson had gotten the lead from one of the cast that, one of the prints that Wallace had cast in that area. There were other reasons too. He had sightings and other things, but that was a big reason. And so people question, well, does that mean that Patty's fake? Is that what it is? And I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. It was very new to all of that. I'm like, Bigfoot, what? So I went home, and this was the early 2000s, so I got on my old dial-up internet and decided to look for this video. I wanted to see this video everybody was talking about, and it took me like 4 days to finally, get it up and running on my old dial-up computer. And, once I finally saw that famous piece of footage, I was hooked. I couldn't believe that anybody thought that was fake. And then I just started kind of getting into other, kind of creatures. And then, in my teen years, my dream, my goal, I was always going to go to school for zoology, and then use that degree in zoology and study cryptozoology. But it didn't happen, and life just kind of happened. And so as I'm going forward with the motions of my life, again, it was the only cryptozoology. It wasn't into aliens, wasn't into ghosts. As a teenager, we would go joyriding around creepy places, and I'll be honest, weird things happen. But I've always been a skeptic. I've always leaned towards there's some explanation for these happenings, and then I went to the Mothman Festival in 2019, and I didn't know it then. But I know now I experienced a string of synchronicities, and at that point in time, my little skeptical brain couldn't ignore the fact that there were things at play here that didn't really add up, that didn't have an explanation, and that maybe there was some type of scientific explanation for all this stuff. It's just I had been personally overlooking that possibility, and from there, I mean, my gosh, I started doing this full time. So I just jumped right in, and it's mostly all Mothman's fault. But some of it's Bigfoot's fault.
Yeah. See, for me, I'm old, so my whole thing was I got introduced to it with In Search of with Leonard Nimoy.
Oh yeah.
Back in the day, and then I started, like you got those little things from school. I remember getting a book on Bigfoot and on ghosts in school and like the Scholastic Book Fair, and then it was on for me. So
a lot of us start at an early age, and it's interesting when you look at the people who are in this community, how much are into like the same things. A lot of us are kaiju fans and always have been. I always have been. A lot of us are horror movie fans and always have been. I don't know why. I don't know why we're all so similar, but we are.
it was birds of a feather.
Sure.
We all flocked together. I mean, seriously, one of my best friends, same way. He got hooked on cryptozoology at a really young age, and he stuck with it too. My kids are into it. Well, two of my kids are into it. The other two aren't, but
I have one 11-year-old, and she thinks I'm fucking nuts, but
I have a 31, a 25, 23, and a 12-year-old. Wow. So the two middle ones are kind of still dig cryptozoology and stuff. The youngest one has autism, so he doesn't care at all. Yeah. If it's not Mario or Sonic the Hedgehog, he doesn't care. But no, it's pretty cool because there's a time to lapse in our age, but yet we've still kind of got into it around the same age. I wasn't lucky enough. I did not have the internet until I was an adult. So I couldn't look up all this stuff. I actually had to go find all the books on it, the library and garage sales and flea markets and everything else like that. Any book I could get on aliens or cryptozoology or ghosts, man, I jumped on it. And years have gone by, and some of them books are long gone, and some of them are still in my collection to this day. But it is definitely something that once you get into, it's really hard to walk away from.
Yeah.
Because it does open your mind, and when your mind is open, you have to learn more.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so you got into it. You got to the Mothman Festival in 2019. Mm-hmm. You had some experiences there. Now, have you gone out and had experiences elsewhere outside of the Mothman area?
Oh yeah, I have. I don't know. It's always weird to talk about it. It's silly because I tell everybody to talk about their things, right? Yep. I do this little experiment whenever I go and give a lecture, and I ask, has anybody had any experiences? Raise your hand at the very beginning. And the last one I did was at the Frog Band Festival here back in March, and maybe like 4 people raised their hand, and I was like, okay, all right. So after I kind of get done talking about me, and talking about what I've experienced and what I've been through, I ask again, okay, how many people have had this experience? And then about 20 people raise their hand. There's definitely a stigma here. So it's strange that I'm like, oh, I hate talking about my stuff, but you guys, I have a horse in this race, right? If I have an experience, I can make money off of it. And I understand where skepticism might come into play here. But I have had some experiences predating 2019. I didn't know it at the time. Well, no, even further back than that. Like I said, me and my friends, we would go out and joyride around and all these like spooky haunted roads and things like that. There's a particular area that we used to go to. I'm from Dayton, Ohio, and it's basically Germantown, Ohio. Smaller than that even, but we used to go right around there, and we've seen weird shit. There's just like super creepy roads called Fudge Road. There's so much lore behind it. We've seen like an old couple walking down the road, and then when we turn back around, they're not there anymore, but there was like nowhere for them to have gone. We saw probably somebody dumping a dead body there. That's not really supernatural, but I guess it could be. But come to find out, that whole area down there, they allegedly have a dog man. And I remember hearing about it at the time because, again, we used to go down there a lot, and I thought that was ridiculous. A werewolf that in the area, that's not real. But now, being who I am now, maybe I never seen signs of one. But maybe. And then, like I said, predating even the Mothman stuff. When I went to the Mothman Festival in 2019, I didn't believe in the Mothman. I thought it was, ridiculous. I got invited out to go to the festival by somebody else who was making like a YouTube video on it, and they thought it'd be funny for me to be like the, quote unquote cryptozoologist. And I was like, yeah, that's cool, but I didn't believe it was a thing. However, I had met somebody who was relaying their encounter to me, that they had allegedly with the Mothman, and just kind of flooded back to me that I saw this thing in 2016 at my friend's house. Inside of her house, I saw this thing, and I didn't know that's what it was at the time. So in 2016, I was at a friend's house. We were partaking in edibles. We were making pot brownies. Okay, that's what we were doing. And I was no stranger to marijuana at the time. I was a regular smoker. We eat our pot brownies. We have a good night. It's time to go to bed. And I'm sleeping on our couch. I'm supposed to be sleeping on our couch. And I'm sitting there and I start kind of freaking out. And if you've ever smoked pot before, sometimes that happens. But it's just kind of growing. Like I am like freaking out. I don't know. Like something within me is just terrified. And sometimes when you're really high, when you're too high or too drunk or whatever the case is, one thing that you'll kind of do, or one thing that I do, is like focus on a point in the room for a second, and you just kind of like tell yourself, you're like, look at that point and you're like, okay, I'm fine. So I decided to focus. She had this like TV stand that was like sitting in the corner of the room. There was probably about 2 or 3 feet between the top of the TV stand and the actual ceiling. So that's the point that I landed on with my eyeball. So I'm like looking there. I'm like, okay, I'm fine. And as I'm saying that to myself, a shape starts to form right where I'm looking, and it's just kind of a black figure. And it just kind of started coming into view, and it was like a head shape. And then what I thought at the time initially were arms start kind of forming, and they're like reaching out like over top of me, like over on the ceiling. But they're not just like reaching outwards like arms, they start coming down. And I realized that they're wings. And I at that point decided to, get up and leave the room. And I went and I woke my friend up and I told her, hey, I'm freaking out. I didn't tell her what I saw. I didn't, again, at that time, I was a very heavy skeptic. I was intending, I'm a proud college dropout, but when I went to college, I went for astrophysics, and I was intending on going back at some point, again, very scientifically driven. I didn't believe in that kind of stuff. In my mind, something was happening with the weed and and all that, and it was nothing. But just knowing what I know now, looking at the way that my life went immediately after that event, and other similar sightings that I've had reported to me, I know it was the Mothman. I know it was. And it was pretty jarring to have that realization. And, I go back to that friend and I ask her, hey, remember that time we got really high and I was freaking out and woke you up? She thinks it's hilarious. And she's like, yeah, of course. She thought
Yeah.
it was really funny. But I tell her I think I saw the Mothman. And she's like, oh, whatever. Because I got weird friends and they're just like, well, you saw the Mothman. That's normal. Um, you should have heard what Joe saw last week or whatever. But yeah, and so, and I hate that story came out later while I became an investigator, while that was my thing, because again, I have a horse in the race, you guys. I have stock in this.
Yep.
But that is 110% a true story that I absolutely happened. So there was that. I saw a thunder crow, which I didn't even know that was a thing until I'd seen it. I was taking my daughter to her follow up. She had a surgery; it was very minor, and I was taking her to a follow up appointment. And I see this big crow. It's just a crow, right? Initially, well, it starts to like driving, and it starts to like try to land on like one of the utility poles, and utility poles are like T shaped, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it decided not to. I don't know why it didn't, but it got close enough to like start to. And then what I noticed about it while it's getting closer and closer and closer, the wings on this crow were about 2 times the size of that pole. And along the width there, and I just thought the wingspan. I just thought, what am I looking at? So I asked my daughter. I'm like, I started asking her, what is that? What do you see? And she's like, it's a crow. And I'm like, okay, you know, it flies off. I didn't follow it. I should have followed it. I regret not following it. Um, but I found out, what is the width of those poles, right? How long across are there? They're about 4 to 6 feet. So we're still only talking a wingspan of like 8 to 12 feet, but the crows aren't that big.
No.
There's no blackbird that we know of that have a wingspan like that.
No.
And I later found out that they're deemed thunder crows. People see them all over.
Yeah. God, about 12 years ago now, maybe somewhere in that ballpark. I was going up 75 to Lima. I worked at the Lima Mall at the time. And this is right around Halloween. This might be a week out of Halloween. I'm driving up 75, and there's this, as you're going north, there is the remnants of a billboard.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm driving by, and it was connected to like his property. And I'm like looking, and there's a big bird on top of one of the poles from the remnants of the sign. And I went, man, them guys went all out. They got a big fake bird up there. And I'm driving, and then the damn thing spreads its wings out. And the wingspan was huge. And I'm sitting there, and I'm driving, I was probably speeding. So it's probably doing like 80, 85 going up the road. And I'm like trying to fish my phone out of my pocket to take a picture. And I didn't get a picture. I regret it to this day. Now I just keep my phone in the center console so I can hurry up and grab it now. So now every time if I drive through that area, I have my phone in my hand and I'm usually in the passenger seat. I make sure somebody else is driving so I can get a picture if I see another one.
What drives you nuts about things like that is that other people saw it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, how do I get a hold of these people? Because mine was, it was literally, a mile away from my own home. And I'm like on the Nextdoor app, it's like for like your neighborhood. I'm like trying to find out who else, because I live in a very populated area. Other people saw this thing. And I'm like trying to find anybody. I'm like, somebody, corroborate the story with me. I know what I saw, and never found anybody. But it goes to show, because initially, had it not tried to land on that utility pole, I wouldn't have ever thought anything of it. How often do we see these things, and the perspective of it, just flying in the air? We just don't even think twice, because we think, oh, it just looks big because it's closer.
Oh, yeah.
Probably a lot. So.
Well, I had a discussion because I got Ken Gerhardt on the show.
Oh, yeah.
God, about a year or so ago. And I don't even know if this made the show, because we actually talked, and then we talked for quite a while after the show ended.
Yeah.
And I was telling him, I was like, there are abnormally large birds locally. And, because I've seen crows that were massive locally. Yeah. And probably, I don't know, twice the size of a normal crow, minimum. And I was always told that, well, I wasn't always told. I started looking into it, and they claim that it's the hormones that we're currently putting into corn and livestock to make it bigger. Crows are carrion eaters, but they also will eat, grain and whatnot.
Yeah.
They're ingesting all that, and they're just getting bigger because of all the hormones in all the food that we're getting. And I asked him about that, and he's like, I don't know, but that sounds pretty plausible.
Well, right. There's a reason why there's giant crows everywhere. I mean, again, people see these things, and it's really fascinating. I had met a guy who does research on it. His name's Kevin. I think it's Gould. I don't know how to say his last name. It's Guhl. He has been compiling all these thunder crow sightings and stuff like that, and people are seeing something. Yeah. I mean, obviously there's something happening to where these creatures are either they're evolving bigger, well, like you said, I mean, if we're putting hormones and stuff in these, we can breed bigger animals. We have done that already with animals. If that's just what's occurring right now, then hey, so be it. But these are, people are like, well, did it have a ring around its neck? Maybe it was a condor. I'm like, no, it was completely black. It wasn't a turkey vulture. It wasn't, I know my birds. It was completely black.
Well, it was a couple years back. One of my really good friends, residential area, housing development, his dog's out in the yard freaking out. And his dog was an older dog. It still is an older dog, but he goes out to check on it, and his dog is trying to get to this big crow eating like a dead squirrel or something in the street. And he walks out there, and it was huge. Yeah. He goes, my dog never freaks out over birds. Birds will land in the yard all the time. Dog does nothing, because it's just an old dog. This one freaked the dog out because it was trying to get at this giant crow.
Wow. I believe it.
Yep. You talk about discovering stuff after the fact, like you discovered that you think you believe it, you've seen Mothman and stuff. I did the same thing. One of my good friends before he passed away, we were talking about weird stuff because he was big into cryptozoology, and he was, I don't know, about 12 years older than me. And we're sitting in his house one day. He's like, oh yeah, when I was a kid, he goes, I think I seen the Ohio grass man.
Oh.
And I went, okay. He goes, yeah, I was out fishing. He goes, I was up on the river. He goes, and I was in some tall grass. He goes, I come out of the grass, and he goes, he goes, I want to say a guy, but it's not a guy. He goes, this thing was covered in matted long hair. It wasn't real tall. He goes, it was probably shorter than he was, but it was all crunched over, so he couldn't really tell. And he told me the story about running into that. And I'm like, really? I was like, because when I was a kid, I was fishing on the same river twice, about 6 or 7 miles apart. One, I live in Piqua, and then I lived in Sydney at the time, later. And in Piqua, I seen it up the road while we were fishing. I seen this thing come out of the woods, very humanoid, come down the river, and it started scooping up water and drinking it, and then kind of looked around and disappeared back into the woods. Didn't think nothing about it because I knew at one point there were homeless people living in the woods behind my house.
Yeah.
And then about 3 years later, I live up the river, and I'm fishing again. And I'm out there by myself. Yet again, something comes out of the woods, runs over. You can see it like trying to get stuff out of the water. It kind of looks up, it sees me, it tears back off into the woods. And my buddy goes, you saw the grass man twice now, right? And I went, I just assumed it was a homeless guy.
It's just some crackhead, like that leprechaun video.
Yeah. Yeah.
It happens, right? I mean, we forget about these things because our brain is just going to pick the easiest explanation that there is. Now, I'm not saying that everybody who has seen a homeless man in the woods or has seen a bird flying, it has seen, something unusual, but it does happen.
Yeah.
you just tend to forget about these things. I mean, like I said, for me, in my mind, I just was personally in denial about anything supernatural. So for me, I wasn't about to believe that I had just seen that. For other people, it's just everyday things. Like you said, you knew homeless people were living in the woods, so it's probably just that. The easiest explanation. Your brain isn't designed to fit all of the information forever.
No.
So it's just going to come up with whatever it can to, settle the dilemma that's happening and set it down.
Yeah, it's going to go for the safe and most logical answer.
Yeah,
But sometimes the safe and most logical answer is not the proper answer. So,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. So,
So how did you now? Did you get in, were you into UFOs younger, or was that later on in life too?
that was later on in life. So I still am, but always had been really afraid of aliens, like really afraid of them. It's, being abducted is a horrifying thought to me. I don't, signs was scary, right? I don't want to look out my window and see a gray staring back at me. When I was 18, here's another one for you. I saw a UFO. Great, wonderful. I was outside of my parents' house and I saw it was like two headlights, like coming, just I don't know, just traveling along the sky, just doing its own thing. But it scared the hell out of me. And I kind of was like, well, what do I do with this information? I just saw a UFO. I just saw a UFO. What do I do with it? Well, at that time, the internet was a lot. I think I had DSL then finally, so it didn't take me 4 days. But I, I was looking up other UFO sightings in the area to see if anybody else had seen things, and lo and behold, we had. Um, but I still wasn't like crazy into the research at all. Um, I have an interesting story I'll tell. I may or may not have encountered a Men in Black. But about a year and a half after I see this UFO, okay, I'm on Craigslist, which is never a good idea. I don't even know if Craigslist is still around, but if it is, don't go on it. I'm on Craigslist and there's like a posting that's about, hey, I'm a film student at Wright State University, which is right here. And they do film, film school.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm making a documentary on UFOs. If you've had a UFO encounter, get a hold of me. I'd like to, feature you in the documentary. And I'm like, well, that'd be cool. So I contact the guy and we meet up and, I just tell my experience. I mean, it wasn't crazy. He'd asked me some questions. I don't even remember what he looked like. He's just he must have been very plain and forgettable. That's not the weird part. The weird part is about 3 years later, I'm on Craigslist again because I don't learn from my mistakes. And I see the same exact ad. I'm a student at Wright State University. I'm making a UFO documentary. If you've had an encounter, let me know. And it just seems very strange that 3 years later, this kid would be taking the same class, working on the same project 3 years later. I didn't meet up with him. I should have, but I wasn't who I am now. If it was me now, I would have done it. But if I ever see the ad again, I'm gonna take him up on the offer. But yeah, it was very bizarre. But that still didn't really get me into the UFO stuff. The UFO stuff didn't come until more into 2019 when I started really getting into the Mothman research, and that had become such a big center point for that kind of phenomena are these lights in the sky. And nowadays it's so strange because I started this heavy into cryptozoology, and I'd say more than anything I'm more into ufology nowadays. I'm better versed in ufology than anything else. And so yeah, I've seen stuff since then. I've got recordings of things that are unusual, and I don't really know what to do with any of it. I think I released one video out into the ether of the internet, and it got big. People, were like, "Oh yeah," you got people that are like, "Oh, it's a satellite. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that," and I'm like, "It's not though. It wasn't those things." But I've got other stuff. I've got one that's like, and it's at night, but it's rotating. Whatever it is, it's rotating, and it's rotating like on its side, and just kind of chugging along, and then it just disappears. And I try to go chase it, and it's not there anymore. I've got a series of pictures where I saw this like silver thing in the sky randomly. And I couldn't really make out the shape of it. I just saw it was like in the middle of the day, and I'm like sitting on my couch at this big bay window, and I just look out. I happen to look outside, and I see this like twinkling in the sky. Who knows? Could have been a balloon. But I tried to take pictures of it. I couldn't get a video of it at all. It would not show up on video. And the pictures that I took, they are really obscure and strange looking and pixelated, not very good, but the shape of whatever the hell this is not the same. Every single picture, there's probably 20 of them. UFOs are kind of easy. People are like, well, I've never seen one. Well, it's because you don't look up enough. I mean, if you just look at the sky, you'll see one. They're there.
We had the discussion a while back at the shop, and we get into the whole thing that people go, well, I've never seen this, or I've never seen this. People go, okay, most of the time, people that believe they see Bigfoot, it's a bear.
Right.
But people go out there and they go, oh, it's just a bear. That one time, it's not a bear.
Yeah.
It's like looking up the sky. Okay, I saw something fly through the sky. Oh, it was an airplane. It was this. It's that one time that it's not that.
And it's not.
It actually is the UFO that you're seeing. And it's the whole fact is that people believe that they mistakenly see, Bigfoot because they see a bear, but then it can go the other way where people believe that they see a bear and they're actually seeing Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I think it's the same way with UFOs and whatnot. I kind of had something similar years ago. At one point, I lived out in the country. There wasn't really anything around. We did have houses out there, but you drive and there was, no big lights, no nothing. And I don't know. I had to be 17. So I was driving. This is probably 1991-ish, maybe. I had a little pickup truck and I'm driving home from work real late one night. And I think my truck's making noises. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I turn the radio off. I can still hear the noise. Man, this sucks, man. It's just my only form of transportation. So I pull my truck off to the side of the road. Still hear the noise. Shut the car off. Still hear the noise. Like, is that farmers or something? So I'm like looking around, trying to see what's going on. And I kind of peek my head and I look out and up and I see this, like, lack of a better term, boomerang shaped thing with light going around the outside of it. And it's what's making the noise. And I'm just sitting there and it's just floating slowly across, it's probably moving pretty quick, but it looks like it's going really slow. And this is back before everybody had a camera, phone or whatever, So I'm just sitting there staring at this thing, just watching it go across, and it just takes and goes like almost 9 degrees, turns and just takes off into the sky, never to be seen again.
It's gone, yeah.
And I don't know, about 10 years later, I run into a guy, and we were sitting there, a guy I'd never met before. He was a temp at work. And he was sitting there, we're all kind of talking about UFOs or something like that. I think I was reading a book on it. And he's like, oh, I saw a UFO like 1991 up by Sydney. And I'm like, when and where? And the guy was legitimately like a road over.
Wow.
He saw it cool too. And I was like, dude, man, it freaked me out. And I was like, he goes, did you run? I was like, no, I think I did the exact opposite of what you should do. I just stood there and watched it and didn't do nothing.
Yeah. And I mean, again, like you were saying, people are like, well, that sometimes when they see these things, it is just the plane. Starlink is responsible for a lot of people being like, oh, it's a UFO, and it's not. We know that it's Starlink, but look how many people still post the pictures and think that it's something strange, and it's not. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that every UFO sighting is explainable, and I think that they just happen so often that we are just again, it's your brain making it simple. Mm-hmm. Reasoning in a way, if we see something strange in the sky, we're just like, whatever. that happens occasionally.
And it doesn't help that, I mean, like I said, you're just down the road, I don't know, like 30 minutes away from me.
Yeah.
So we're between, right patch between us or around there. And they got some aircraft that come from there. And some that might be that. But yet again, not all of it.
Not all of it. Yeah, that's for sure. I've had some really interesting people that I've talked to come out of Right Pat. And I can't share everything and I can't share all of them. And again, I know how that sounds, guys. I know. I got stock in this. I know. But really, genuinely, I mean, people that don't know each other, never work together, that say different things. I had one guy who says that everybody that works on the base is a contractor. Okay, they're all under contract, so they might come and go. They might stay for a really long time. It really just depends. I had one guy say that the Air Force Base is like a hot spot for hauntings. People say it's really haunted there. It's been on shows and everything. Ghost investigations or whatever. And he says, well, that's not the case. This is the first time I'd ever really heard this theory. He said, no, it's actually not haunted at all there. What it is that, they use Right Pat as a place to reverse engineer technology that they get, and it fucks with things. It makes things wonky. It makes things act strange, and it seems like it's a haunting, but it's not really that. It's just this technology we don't really know how to use. And and I was like, huh, that's really interesting. I never really thought about that before, and just kind of forgot about it. But then I talked to somebody else and they said the same thing. And I thought that was really interesting. I had never come across that before. I never read it in any book. I never seen it in any show or documentary. I never heard that theory thrown out there before. And so the fact that I was being told this by people who work there and who, don't know each other. I mean, I guess they could know each other and they're both in on some hoax or something against me specifically. Who knows? But I don't think so. I don't think that's the case. And when I'm kind of pressed about, because then I went back to the first guy that said it and kind of pressed him a little bit more about, well, what do they do with the technology? What have they achieved? What have they done? And he's like, well, they don't really do anything with it. He was like, once they kind of start digging into it a little bit, they all kind of come to this ethical decision that we as a species, whatever this is they're dealing with, aren't there. Like, we're just not mentally, intellectually, like, we just have no idea what we're working with. So typically they'll put those projects down and kind of vault them for a while, and then they'll kind of revisit them every so many years as science advances to see if maybe they can understand it a little bit better.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, my gosh, I'm like, I'm sold on it. Okay, yeah, I'll buy that. That's fine. I get it.
Well, I met a colonel from Right Pat, 20 some years ago. And it was a friend of a friend, it was one of them things, and we just happened to be at the same spot. And he told me what he was, and I'm like laughing. I go, oh, so, and this is all off, just joking around. I was like, oh, they got all, I was like, have you seen all the aliens down there? And he turns around without, like, he goes, oh, they're not there anymore, and walks off.
Yeah.
And I was like, and my brain was like, oh, he's messing with me. Then the other party goes, was he? It's like, it was just so nonchalant. Oh, they're not there anymore. And walked and went to go get something to drink. And it was like, well, instead of no, they're not there, or no, whatever, it's like, oh, they're not there anymore.
They all act like that, though. Every single one of them. They're not going to be like, oh, yeah, there's aliens. I mean, they're going to be very just kind of jovial and silly about it. But when it happens over and over and over again, consistently with all these people that work there, then you really got to wonder. I mean, have you been to the Air Force Museum there?
Not for a long time. I drive by it constantly because we do the comic book conventions over in at Wright State, and so I drive by that all the time. And I'm like, if you're going to hide a UFO, that would be the perfect place to do it, because you got all experimental aircraft there. You could just hide it amongst the stuff and no one would ever really pay attention.
So I had never been, and that was kind of, I guess, not a very Dayton, Ohio thing of me to do. So I went finally in 2021, and I went with, I took my kid, I went with one of my friends, took her kid, we went, it was a great time. The gift shop there, okay, the gift shop doesn't even like hide it. They sell all this alien stuff. Like all this alien stuff right there. They sell books on the subject, like it just right in front of your face. Like they're just like, yeah, whatever. There's aliens here. It's fine. Like there's like you could buy like a T-shirt that's like, oh, I went to Right Pat and saw an alien, or and it's wild. It's
one of them ones where they give you enough information that you're like, oh, really? And then people are like, it's just them messing with you. And it would be something the government would do.
Right.
That they would like go, here's a taste. And we're not going to give you the whole steak, but here, just try this.
Yeah. Just
And
some.
what is it that all the good alien movies like your ETs and stuff like that
Oh
is
yeah.
preparing the human race for when we finally meet aliens because the government knows already. I'm like,
Maybe. I'm not, I like to operate. I am, again, very skeptical, and that makes me kind of unpopular sometimes. Because I will be the first one to tear apart your picture of a tree stump, you know?
yep,
Um, but, but it does make me popular in other ways because people are sick of that shit. You know what I
yep.
mean?
Oh yeah,
Like,
definitely.
there's people that want the truth. There's people that want this to be taken seriously and as a serious science, and I'm part of that camp. But the kid in me, right, the romantic in me wants to believe all those silly fun things.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, I'll research the hell out of anything, and I will, try to get to the bottom of as much as I can. But sometimes, most of the time, you just hit a brick wall and you can't, right? That's why I'm typically very careful. I have a professional opinion and a personal opinion about different things, and I try to make that very clear before I speak on it. Um, but yeah, that's one of those theories that I don't know. Honestly, what I think about the government, and this isn't going to be popular, and that's fine. Um, Based on my research and what I've learned, my professional opinion is that they really don't know what these craps are. They really don't know who's driving them. They might have some things here and there. They might have pieces of debris, maybe there was a crash somewhere. Maybe they did get a hold of bodies. Who knows? But I think that they're just as much in the dark as we are. I think that ufologists are more reliable than whatever the current program is, Arrow or whatever, or, whoever.
Yep.
But that's my take on it. I don't think they know. And I think that they're afraid to know just because I think it's human to be afraid because we are under the understanding that we're the only, species on the entire in the entire universe, so that's what I think.
Well, I just don't know why. Everybody's the anti UFO people weird me out because for the simple fact is that what is the one? You take a cup, scoop out of the ocean. You look inside that cup, and you go, "Oh, there's no whales in the ocean,"
Oh, right. Yeah.
because you can only see this much of it.
Right.
And I'm like, but it's so massive
Right.
that there just probability is there has to be.
It's yeah, it's pretty um I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's highly improbable that we're the only intelligent species out there. It just doesn't. Now, whether or not they're visiting us, I don't even think that should be a question anymore. I don't think people should question are UFO real? Are UFOs real? They are real. We know they are. I think
Mm-hmm.
the question now is like, what or who are they, and what is their goal? What are they doing here? That's kind of the step that we should be taking in any type of honest, UFO research now. That's what the government should be doing. They keep teasing this UFO disclosure situation, and they're not. They're just doing the same shit we've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, somebody saw this weird thing. Okay,
No, it's
great.
swamp gas. It's a weather balloon. It's this. It's this.
Yeah,
It's this.
it's whatever.
But
Well, they're finally starting to say a little bit more. We know a little bit more now.
it's
Which
because the
again,
cameras are getting so much better, and now they've got all
right?
that. Was it like 2 years ago when they released all those footage of the Navy airplanes coming across the UFO,
Yeah.
and they couldn't
Hmm.
hide it at that point.
Well, it was leaked back in I think 2017, and
Yeah.
they refused it. They were like, "Oh no, that's not from us. That's not from us." And then it came out. I believe it was 2020, and they were like, "Yeah, by the way, that video, that's our video." Uh, and we don't know what it is. And also, we're going to start studying UFOs. And it's like, well, no wonder nobody believes you guys about anything because you just play dumb. And it's like, but we know better. But I don't think that there's some big cabal or some big conspiracy to cover alien life. I don't think that aliens come and meet with presidents or anything like that. Um, I don't think they have any reason to. I think to them, we are pretty much insects. Like we're just, I mean, we're interesting enough to come and look at and maybe poke at sometimes and put under a magnifying glass, but I think that's about it.
It's no different than us going to the zoo and seeing the wild animals. I think is what it comes down to them. You
Yeah.
know, we're just a novelty.
Yeah.
We're,
Yeah. We don't affect their life. I think to a degree we can. I think I personally, my personal opinion is that we are now we're getting more into our space exploration. We've done a lot more on Mars than, we ever have, obviously. People are talking about, there's talk of maybe terraforming Mars. I think that's probably our direction that we're going because we're killing our planet, right? We're not going to be able, as a human race, we're not going to be able to live if we continue to kill the Earth.
yeah.
And so, of course, we got to find somewhere else to go. Well, when we start traveling to different planets and using those resources, at that point, we become planet eaters. We're
Mm-hmm.
just hopping around and killing all these planets. And I think in the grand scheme of things, that could potentially fuck with other ecosystems on other worlds. And I think that whatever these things are, I think would stop us from doing that. Because we're dumb.
Yeah.
So
We're Galactus, but without being that cool.
right, we're not even cool, right? We don't even have like cool stuff, and we don't wear cool clothes, or we're just boring. We just go and fuck everything up and leave and go. Oh, eventually we'll leave and go somewhere else, and that'll be the idea.
That's what we do now on Earth. We go
That's
get all the
exactly.
shit we can and then move on to another place and get all the shit we can and then move on to another place. And
Yeah.
we're the cockroaches of the galaxy.
Well, and then it comes into question. Hey, if that's your theory, that's great. One thing I like to say about theories is that you have to make it make sense, right? So it's got to track with all the other information that you take on.
Mm-hmm.
So backtrack that a little bit. As humans, we just question our existence in general. Where did we come from? Where exactly? Some people think that we could be alien in origin. We could have already done this before.
Yep.
And we're just keep doing it. Who knows? I don't dig that far into it. I'm not a big history buff, but it is interesting to think about.
Yeah. Being into the like you're a skeptic. I'm the skeptic. When it comes to stuff, I've gone on ghost hunts and stuff like that, and I'm always the one tearing apart everybody's footage and stuff like that. And I'm a firm believer in be open minded, but not so open that your brain falls out.
Oh yeah, it's my favorite.
Because my wife is a believer in ghost and supernatural, and I'm the believer in the cryptids and the UFOs. We've gone out together. We've seen crazy stuff. I've been able to debunk almost everything that I've ever recorded, except for like one thing. All my friends that I've taken their footage, and when you're looking at a camera, little screen on a camera or something, man, you're like, oh, look at that. Then I'll go and I'll hook it up and I'll blow it up on my big ass TV, and I'm like, oh, it's a bird. Oh, it's whatever. And we had one. We were checking out a crybaby bridge, a covered bridge that had actually burnt down, and it's now just a regular bridge. And we're filming there and stuff like that. And of course, the one guy that's with us is freaking out because of orbs and stuff. I'm like, dude, it's just dust. It's just all the moisture in the air. And he thinks he got something. And then I go and I put it on the big TV and I'm advancing it like frame by frame. I'm like, oh, it's an owl. It's a big ass owl. I can see it plain as day.
Yeah. Sometimes it is just the big ass owl.
Yeah. And, and it's really funny is that, God, I'm trying to remember how many years ago this was. I ended up going to C2E2 over in Chicago for the comic book convention over there. And they had Paranormal State, the new class. That's when they had fired Ryan Buell for, all this stuff. And so I'm sitting there talking to the cast, and they weren't really busy. We're just chit chatting, and they're like, "Oh, have you recorded?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I recorded this," and I told him our whole story, and he's like, "We've never got anything that good." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Uh, I'm like, you're on a syndicated or not a syndicated, you're on a television show, and I'm just some dude that just happened to record something weird. And he's like, do you have it? I'm like, yeah, it's probably on a VHS tape somewhere in my house. Share it. I'm like, I don't know if I want to.
Yeah. Well, I'm very much of the mind that I think that you should go looking for the stuff, but you don't get to decide when it happens.
Oh,
It's just
definitely.
it's just going to happen to you.
Yeah.
If it's meant to happen to you, it's just going to. Um, and there's no amount of research or investigation or expedition or anything that's going to have you find it. I mean, Bigfoot included. As much as I think Bigfoot's just an animal, right? And I do believe that. This is just an animal we haven't, tagged and bagged yet. And it's a matter of time until we do. I just think that you could be a hunter and go out there your entire, every weekend for your entire life and never see anything, or you can be a random person going out and you don't never go outside and you go on a hike once and you see it. It's just happenstance, and I believe that the same thing with hauntings. For sure. I've been to so many places. I tell people all the time, I'm like, well, most of my job is just going to the woods or going to an abandoned place and nothing happens. Because that's exactly what it is. But when it does happen, when something does happen, and it is truly unexplainable. I mean, there's no feeling like it. It's very validating. It's a very emotional experience. Because you spend all this time and nothing happens, and then you're like, fuck, everything that happened before, I'm just nuts. That's what it is. I'm just crazy. And then it happens, and then it does happen again, and you're like, oh my God, I'm actually not insane. This is valid. This is real. But yeah, it's very interesting how that goes. That's why I don't watch the TV shows. I know they make the stuff happen because I know there's no way they're going to these places and every single time something happens.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There will, I've got to talk, and they told me not to tell anybody. I was at Pittsburgh Comic-Con, and I was talking discreetly with a couple people from a big paranormal television show. And I was like, how much of it is real? How much of it is put on by the thing? I was like, because you guys can go out 100 times, and if you go out 100 times and you don't get anything, you're going to get dropped.
Right.
And I was like, how many times has it been a producer's call that something happens? And he's like, yeah, I'm not saying it has happened, but he goes, we've gotten phone calls before. And I'm like, oh, okay. All right. They just kind of make something happen, and or make it seem like something happened. Even if you go back and look at the footage, nothing happened.
Right.
Like, did you hear the voices? And you're like, I didn't hear no voices. Did you hear any voices? But yeah, they have to kind of play it up. I'm like, I got tinnitus. All I hear is ringing. So,
Yeah.
and there could be a ghost right next to me. I'd never know it.
You're like, is someone's alarm going off right now?
Yeah. Somebody pick up my phone? Jesus. Well, what's funny is that my wife to this day claims our old house was haunted. We lived there for 9 years, I believe, and I never saw nothing. Nothing ever happened weird for me. Nothing. When my now youngest was little toddler, before he was, I guess he was standing at, Tina was like, he was standing at the bottom steps talking to somebody at the top of the steps. And I was like, was Brandon or Joe up here? No, Brandon and Joe were at their grandparents' house. I'm like, oh, okay. The dogs wouldn't go upstairs, stuff like that. I was like, but I never had any of that happen to me, but my wife has. And we lived in the same house for 9 years. So
Yeah, it is really weird some of the things that can happen. Like I'm very well, again, controversial. I stood up at a paranormal convention one time talking about the Mothman, and they asked what I thought about ghosts, and I said, well, I don't believe ghosts are dead people. And the whole room hated me for just that instant of a second until they let me explain. Because I don't believe that ghosts are dead people. I think that would be a terrible fate, right? We all die and we're just stuck here. That would suck.
yeah,
But I think that, not that hauntings aren't valid. I think they are. I think that it depends on the type of haunting you're talking about, which would, garner the type of explanation. But I've definitely had strange things happen. I have a like a Christmas decoration, right? It's a sign that lights up. You put batteries in it, it lights up. All right, it says joy. Okay, and the sign did not have any batteries in it, but lights up. Now, I don't know anything about electricity or how these things work. Who knows? I'm not the person that can tell you how that works or why that works that way. But there's no batteries in this thing, and it just randomly will come off and on and blink, and then it'll come on and stay on for like a day and then turn off. I mean, it's insane. I've had stuff like that. I've had silly things. I had a psychic medium on my show one time, which is already another thing that I'm really on the fence about. But her and I were talking. She was telling me about this story about some investigation she was doing or some terrible haunting someone had. And while we're talking, my curtains start moving, and that was strange. There's no windows open. It's not by event. It wasn't a big deal. The curtains moved on their own. Who knows? But the scariest thing I had happen in my home. I went to the bathroom. I go to my restroom, and as soon as you open the door, I have a very tiny bathroom. A lot of people do. I live in an apartment, small, and you can like see the mirror, right? In the mirror, you can kind of see like the shower, right? The other side of the bathroom from the mirror. When I come in the bathroom, I look in the mirror, and there was like an orange figure. Orange. It was like orange in the mirror. And immediately my eyes divert over to that spot, and there's nothing there. And I look back in the mirror, there's nothing there. That was really strange. That was really, really weird. That one really freaked me out. I don't get freaked out very often anymore. But that one really got me. And I was just like, I've always been told, like, hey, if you have a haunting going on or anything like that, you just need to tell it to leave. So I'm like standing there, and I'm like, you need to get the fuck out of my house. You're not invited here. And I've never had anything like that happen again. I don't know. I don't know why these things happen. We've had people that call us. They want us to investigate their property, and we go out there and nothing happens. They got these really high profile properties. Are like, oh, shit is happening all the time. You can come over any day, any time. And, there's dishes, flying out of the cabinets and everything that you see in all the movies. And you go over there and there's nothing going on. So I don't know. I don't know. I can't explain how it chooses you, but I don't know. I think it certainly does.
Well, what's funny is you talk about going into these like high profile places where they talk about all of the supernatural happens. I've done that. I've gone into a building where it's like, oh, dude, this place is haunted. Stuff happens, man. You get and I was able to explain everything.
Yeah.
I'm like, this place isn't haunted. It's just old. I was like, the wiring sucks. So you get that where your head kind of thumps because of the electrical field it creates. And it's funny because I was sitting there holding the EMF meter, and you'd go to the floor and nothing. You'd get about halfway up the room, you'd like beep, 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 start beeping real loud, and you take it back down. Everywhere where the electrical was, it was going nuts.
Yeah.
You put it near the wall, same thing. And they're like, oh, you get all these EV. I'm like, yeah, it's because of the bad electrical. It's building's like 200 years old. So,
yep.
Shit happens. But you talk about where people got upset with you because you said, oh, you don't believe in ghosts. I remember talking with a bunch of people. We were supposed to have a Bigfoot expert come to the shop years ago, and like last minute they had to cancel. Shit. So we ended up a bunch of us ended up sitting around talking about it. And I'm sitting there, I was like, yeah, I believe Bigfoot exists, but I don't believe in Loch Ness Monster. I think Loch Ness Monster is just sturgeon, just identified actual aquatic animals. And people got mad, and they're like, well, how can you believe in Bigfoot and not believe in... I was like, okay, there's dinosaurs have been gone for a long time. And I start, and they're getting mad. And I'm like, dude, I'll tell you 100%. I believe, there's two chupacabras. I believe one of them is a real creature, and I believe the other one's not real.
Yeah.
And people get upset because it's either all or nothing. I'm like, how can it be all or nothing, dude?
Yeah. Well, exactly. You don't have to believe in one thing to believe in another. And, and we're all going to have our own bias. On situations. And I say that I have a weekly podcast, and I do my damnedest to make sure that the information I'm delivering is accurate. I try to find, at least something about whatever story is being told that other people may not know about. I
Yeah.
try to dig a little deeper and really research it as if I'm researching a personal case, right? As much as I can. I do try to do that. However, a week and researching something is just simply not enough time for me
No.
to really form a good opinion on something like this. It just isn't. So I'll say whether or not I think it's plausible. Sometimes it is a topic that I happen to be very well versed in and something that I regularly research, and so I can give a little bit more of an opinion. But that's just another part of it. I mean, people that don't believe in stuff like Bigfoot, they just don't believe in it because they've never done the research. I'll put the post out there a lot, because I have an offer. There's an offer on the table. If I can find somebody who can recreate the Patterson Gimlin costume, quote unquote costume, I'll pay for it. I'll pay for the whole damn thing. If you can recreate it with items from that time and we could recreate that film, I will pay for it, and I'll pay you something. I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll work it out. Right? What are you worth? Nobody's ever done it. And so, I put it out there a little bit about that footage and how, to me, it's ridiculous that anybody thinks it isn't real. And the people that respond, when they do, it's the same. It's kind of the same stuff. And I'm just going to assume that maybe most of your listeners know kind of the situation, but people bring up Bob Hieronymus and how, well, he admitted that he did it, and then Philip Morris, well, he admitted that he made the suit. And and then you point out, well, okay, but then Discovery paid them to recreate that suit and make a documentary about it, and it was so bad they didn't even air it. So I could be like, hey, I was Patty, I was in the Patties. Anybody could say that, right?
Oh,
Doesn't
yeah.
mean they did it. It's just people that haven't done the research enough, right? They just see the claims. It's the same people that read a news headline but don't read the article.
Yep, definitely. Well, my whole thing is that I love people who go, oh, well, they made a costume. I was like, cutting edge movie makeup and special effects was the Planet of the Apes
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah.
And that does not look anywhere near what the Patty looked like in the Patterson Gimlin film. And yeah, everybody's like, oh, you can make that now.
Now you can.
Yeah, it's pretty common. Legitimately, I could do it right now with modern stuff,
Right.
but that's
You couldn't make that in 67. Well, and you have all these people that have come forward and said, no, it's not possible. You have Disney Imagineers that said it wasn't possible to make that suit. It's not possible. You couldn't get muscle movement on a suit like that.
Nope.
And people are like, yeah, but Bob said that he was in it. And Philip Morris is the one that made it. And it's like, okay, well, you just want to be dumb. You're just choosing to be dumb at this point.
Yeah, it's the ones who absolutely refuse to believe that there's anything out there.
Yeah.
Anything. This is the world that exists. And what I think is funny is a lot of these people who absolutely refuse to admit Bigfoot, aliens, all that stuff do not exist, are like, oh yeah, angels, those are real. It's like,
yeah,
you can't have one.
Yeah, it just doesn't really work that way. I'd shared something on Twitter the other day. It was somebody on Fox that was like, well, aliens aren't real because it wasn't in the Bible. And it's like, yeah, but my guy Walmart wasn't in the Bible either, but it exists. I mean, aren't we kind of sick of following a very ancient piece of information? Shouldn't somebody update the damn Bible at some point? I mean, my God, it's 2023. I'm just saying it is interesting. I don't know which camp is worse, though. The people that don't believe anything at all ever, no matter how much evidence you throw at them, or the people that believe absolutely everything. They're both pretty frustrating.
Yeah, definitely. I know people both ways. That's exact. And then the other person's like, oh my God, did you see all the footage I got? I'm like, dude, that's legitimately a shadow. I had a girl I know, she messages me. She's like, oh my God. She goes, her nanny cam, I guess, picked up movement in her kid's room. And she sent it to me and I watched it. And I'm like, okay. I was like, I want you to go do a few things for me. And she went in the room. I was like, okay. I was like, make sure your furnace is completely off. There's no air conditioning, no furnace, no nothing. She's like, okay. She shuts everything down. I was like, now is there movement in the room? And she filmed it for a few days, and she's like, there's not been any movement in that room. And I was like, okay, now go turn your furnace all back on and tell me if there's movement in your room.
Yeah, does it start moving now? Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, you got people, yeah, they want it so badly. They'll do anything to make it seem like it's happening, to convince themselves that it's happening. But that still doesn't take away the credible accounts that there's weird shit out there.
Definitely.
It happens.
100%.
It happens. Not everything, right? Not everything, but there is weird shit out there. I get what you're saying about Nessie. I can understand why that would make a lot of people upset. I hate to admit it, but have to agree at the same time. Yeah. That one is one that people come up with all kinds of ridiculous explanations for, because here's what we know, and here's what a lot of people just don't. Nobody ever talks about this. Plesiosaurs don't crane their neck. They couldn't. They physically could not crane their neck. It wasn't possible.
Nope.
And we know that because we have fossils, and then we know that the neck didn't bend that way. So if they're seeing this thing holding its neck up out of water, or I like the report of the guy who saw it crossing the street. That's really fun. Yeah. But that's basically what he described. Well, it's not a plesiosaur. Whatever the hell it is, it's not a plesiosaur. Some people say that it's a dinosaur ghost.
Dinosaur ghost.
Which is, I mean, like I said, the child in me, the romantic in me, I want to be like, yeah, fuck yeah, dinosaur ghost. But the skeptic in me is like, probably not.
Yeah.
If there is a creature in that lake, it is probably some type of giant eel.
Yeah.
That is the most likely explanation. So
well, I love there's underwater caves. It's kind of connected to the ocean. Things can get in and out. I'm like, there's not enough food. They know for a fact there's not enough food to feed a apex predator that would have to eat that much food to stay that big. But there is food there. But I think what we're seeing is the food. So,
yeah, I think that people, they just ignore the facts of things just to make it true. Yep. But that's people. People do it with all kinds of stuff.
Oh yeah.
And apparently, right now they're mowing out. So every single time I do a show, my property decides to mow.
Mine is that my dogs, which are now upstairs with my youngest, they were really good when I first started doing the podcast. They'd chill out and like lay under the table. Now, nope. About 20 minutes in, they went out. I'll let them out. Then they'll start barking and stuff, went back in. Then they'll went back out. I'm like, so I just take them upstairs now. I just like, all right, you're good. Go lay down. Go.
Yeah, that's the easiest. I think it's obviously the Men in Black are the landscapers here, and they're just trying to silence me. But so if you hear mowing in the background, it's just the damn Men in Black.
You hear the dogs barking. That's actually not mine. That's my neighbor's dog. So
it's not even your fault. It's Dog Man out there. Dog Man out in your yard.
It's Thor. It's the neighbor dog. Dog loves me. I love that dog. Oh. Not a fan of my neighbors, but man, I love their dog. But
it'd be like that sometimes.
Yep. Super friendly puppy. I don't care. He's a good sized dog. Big dog. Still has a puppy bark though.
Well, with a name like Thor, he had better be a big dog.
And then I have my little fat dog is laying on the floor right behind me. One of them. She's a corgi. She doesn't make any noise.
Wow.
If she makes noise, that's when you know she needs to go outside.
Oh, something's wrong.
She's so quiet and chill. So
pay attention to her. Oh.
Yep. So, but so now I gotta ask you, when did you start with your podcast?
Yeah. So I started the podcast back in 2020, like a lot of people did. Back in, I think it was March. Yeah, we just hit our anniversary. I think it was March. I don't even know. I started it honestly when I started this Mothman stuff. I wasn't a social media. I didn't even have a smartphone at that point in my life. In 2019, I didn't have a smartphone. I just wasn't that kind of person. So I had no social media footprint at all. I start digging into, like I said, I was initially asked to work on a Mothman YouTube video with actually somebody I was dating at the time. And as we kind of started digging deeper into the phenomena, we had noticed that, this was bigger than just what we were doing. And obviously more personal to us at that point because so much had happened to us along that journey. We decided we were going to make a feature-length documentary about it. Well, things didn't go so hot, and we broke up, and he didn't want anything to do with the documentary anymore, but I wanted to finish it. That was like my thing. I mean, initially, maybe I just wanted revenge on the guy, and I just wanted to show him what I could do without him. I don't know if it's just because it occupied my mind at the time. I'm not really sure, or if I just really thought the truth was very important and I needed to get it out there. But I wanted to finish this documentary. I had no social media footprint at all. So I'm like, I've never filmed anything a day in my life. I have absolutely no fucking idea what I'm doing. I don't even have Twitter or Instagram or anything like that. I need to do something. And so I did. I started kind of focusing on social medias a bit more. A lot of people did at the time because it was COVID, right? We're in the middle of a pandemic. Yeah. And but I had started just a little bit, just right before that I had started. And I get on social media and I put a call out there. I start asking people, hey, does anybody know anything about film or filmmaking or editing? Or because I don't. I'm like, hey, do you want to work on this documentary with me? And I received an email from a gentleman that's like, hey, I'm a filmmaker. I'm a filmmaker out of Chicago. I can certainly help. Honestly, I don't expect anything for it. I just really want to be involved with your project. By the way, also, I'm a contactee. I had this experience. I saw aliens in my home as a child, hanging out with my mom, and it was interesting. And, here's my phone number. He wrote me like this novel of an email. Here's my phone number. Call me. And I'm like, okay. So I call the guy. And we talk, and I mean, my God, I talked to this guy for like 3 hours. I mean, we hit it off. Me and this guy hit it off immediately. And I was just kind of telling him, I'm like, well, I'm not anybody at all, and I'm just going to make this document. I'm just going to do it, right? I'm just going to jump in and just do it. And he's like, yeah. He's like, well, why don't you start a podcast? You don't even have to do anything. You just kind of get on and you just talk. You don't even have to put clothes on. And I'm like, that sounds fantastic. That's a great idea. Let me go ahead and do that. And my quarantine buddy at the time was one of my best friends, Ivy. And, her and I started doing it, and we were just sitting on my couch with one microphone doing the podcast. And eventually she left, because her life kind of went on back to normal. And at that point, my life was full on in this world. And so I needed a new co-host. And, it ended up being that same guy that sent that very long email, Pat O'Sullivan. And he is my current co-host, and I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. But it wasn't really on purpose. I don't know. He suggested me do the podcast. I took his advice, and I think it was all a ploy for him to do a podcast with me. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
But here we are.
Cool. What's funny is that I got an interview coming up with okay. Sorry. It's my mother-in-law complaining about the dogs. But one of my friends, he's a comic book writer, and he's also in the documentary Eyes of the Mothman. Chad Lambert, he's does an interview with that, and I got a copy of that movie around here somewhere that's signed by him. So
very cool. Very cool. Yeah, it's my mom initially, when I told her what I was doing with my life, she was very shocked because I'm not very old, but I'm too old to be switching careers, let's be honest. And I told her I was making a Mothman documentary, and she was like, well, aren't there Mothman documentaries out there already? And she's not wrong. There are. And so what was going to make mine different? And I haven't been super secretive about the details that are in it. It's very clear. Initially, this was just going to be a retelling of the history of Point Pleasant, the Silver Bridge collapse, this, that, and the other. But as I've researched into it, I know that Mothman and the Silver Bridge collapse don't have anything to do with each other. That people don't really quite seem to understand what this creature is at all, because everybody seems to think it's some type of omen or warning, and it's not. I want to distance it from that story as much as possible. As much as I respect John Keel for all of his research and all the work that he did, we know a lot more now than we did then.
Yeah.
And it's time that we update that story, and it's time that we start, kind of showing people more of the facts and what this is. And of course I want to share my own personal accounts with this, and because it is personal. I mean, that's crazy. People ask me, well, what do you think the Mothman is? Well, whatever it is, it's a very personal experience.
Yeah.
And more so than just seeing a Bigfoot. You see a Bigfoot, and I'm not saying seeing a Bigfoot can't be jarring, but I don't know what happens. Something happens with the Mothman that just changes your entire life.
Oh,
and now I sound like a cult leader, so
nah, it's all good. So, all right. This has been fun. Not gonna lie, it's really fun talking to somebody that has a lot of the same interests I do. And with the Mothman is, I don't know. I've had people who like, oh, Mothman's supernatural. Mothman is metaphysical. It's actual. Then you get it's an alien. Actually, it's a a creature. It's a harbinger. You get all these different answers, and I'm like, I think it might be all of them.
It is a little bit of all of them. It's
yes.
It's not terrestrial. It doesn't live here. You're not going to go out and find a Mothman nest. I mean, I've tried, guys. I've tried, and it doesn't happen. But yeah, it is kind of all of them. That is something that I'm also trying to bridge the gap on. A lot of this phenomena, the same thing. Mm-hmm. What that thing is, who knows? Some people call it different things, but it's the same. It's the same thing. And I want to progress that idea that we are doing a disservice by dividing it up into. I mean, it's okay to kind of micromanage it, right? You got different experts. Discovery takes a team of people. We need different experts within the community to bring their expertise in order for us to come to the same conclusion. However, I got people that believe in ghosts. I think it's fucking ridiculous that people believe in aliens. People that believe in aliens who think it's crazy that you believe in Bigfoot. That's stupid.
Yeah.
We got to stop doing that to ourselves. We're not going to get anywhere if we keep having that divide when, like I said, all of these things have such carryover, and not all of them do. Again, like I said, I think Bigfoot is a flesh and blood creature, but you have like the Presque Isle incident where you had a Bigfoot sighting and a UFO sighting at the same time. You're telling me those two things weren't connected at that time?
Yep.
I don't know, but that's my hot take on it.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to keep you too much longer here. It's been a blast. I hope to maybe get you back on again. We'll talk more because I got to go deal with dogs and stuff now. And it's getting close to getting time for me to cook dinner too. So
usually this happens. I'll go on a show the first time, and we'll talk a little bit about everything, and then eventually I go back and we'll talk about something a little more specific. That's okay. I expect it.
Yeah, definitely. We'll focus. We'll do some more research and we'll pick a topic and we'll run with it.
Sounds good.
So, but I greatly appreciate it. Can you tell people where to find you at?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me over on Facebook, Ashley Hilt. I'm the one with the red hair. You can find me on Twitter or Instagram at It's Ashers with a Z. And then, of course, you can listen to on Wednesdays when we talk weird anywhere you listen to podcasts.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I think my dog needs out now. So,
okay, have fun with your dogs.
Yeah, I got the two corgis in the mutt, so we'll get them outside and let them.
I'm gonna go eat. I'm hungry.
Yep. So, well, thank you very much, and this will go up Monday at 12 noon, and I'll send you a link and stuff. And like I said, everyone talk, just give me a heads up, or I'll give you a heads up, and we'll do something again.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
All right. Well, you take care, and you have yourself a good day and a weekend.
You too. I'll talk to you later.
Later. Bye.